Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow Driven CEO. It's Friday here in Melbourne, Australia, and Thursday evening, afternoon, evening in, 40 minutes from San Francisco. And I'm so privileged, I'm going to say, to have Ben Narasin join the show today. Ben, welcome and thank you for giving me your time.
Oh, thanks for having me. Great way to finish off the day.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because obviously it's probably what, 6 o'clock, 5, 6 o'clock in
Yeah, about to be.
yeah.
Yeah, a few minutes before six.
Yeah, nice. I am, like I said, I'm super privileged to have you on the show, and I want to just celebrate. I love to celebrate people's successes, and yeah, privileged and inspirational is what I would use when in the fact that I'm talking to you because you're a seasoned venture capitalist, entrepreneur, and you're the founder of Tenacity. I love the name Tenacity, so I'm going to ask you about how you came up with that name for your business, Tenacity Venture Capital, and a firm that's focused on bold, early stage investments that back founders with vision and also what I love, conviction. You have to have conviction, right? 25-year track record spanning startups, building and 18 seed investing and then 18 years as an investor. You've funded breakout successes like Dropcam, Lending Club, and ZennyFits. And you're known for your thesis-driven approach and willingness to bet early. So taking those calculated risks. And you believe that greatness is born from risk. Absolutely love it. And that resistance is not something to avoid, but to move through. So you'll regularly appear on media platforms like CNBC, which I watched the other day. Thank you for sending it through. And you share sharp insights on markets, founder psychology, and the evolving landscape of innovation and capital. And sounds like you've been on the circuit. You've been talking about Figma today as well. So tell us, Ben, about your journey. And then I've got a few questions for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was born an entrepreneur as far as I can tell. I started my first business when I was 12. I had startups from age 12 to 37, culminating in a company I was able to take public after starting it with a sketch on the back of a napkin. And then decided that was time for me to move on to sort of building a life in a normal way. And so retired, took up golf, took up tennis, started making friends. Before friends were only people that were relevant to my business, and realized after a while that that was not remotely interesting to me. Golf didn't take, tennis didn't take, friends, fine. But when I moved to Silicon Valley, about 23 years ago, I saw this huge gap in the market between angel and venture. And that's what I wanted to attack. So I started one of the first institutional seed funds in 2007. The first 8 years of my experience was exactly that. Lending Club, which you mentioned, was my first institutional investment, largest tech IPO of the decade when it came out. I've backed that founder again in his new business Upgrade. He is also an LP in my fund. Renaud is awesome in so many ways. He helps my founders. He's a great founder himself. So now, I basically I've had a bunch of conversations of late, interviews or otherwise, around and researchers trying to figure out, and they're like, what's the secret? How do you figure out how to find great founders? I'm like, look, I think there's no secret. First of all, it's just hard work.
Yeah.
You've got to do an enormous amount of work to go out there and find opportunity. I mean, I'm not claiming that being on a podcast with you at 6 p.m. is hard work, but I'm not willing to end the day until I've exhausted all the possibilities of doing anything that could potentially help my entrepreneurs or get me in front of more entrepreneurs, which is more how I think about this.
Yeah.
So, one, it's hard work. But the other thing is, I spent 25 years as an entrepreneur. I don't think it's possible for somebody to bluff me into believing that they could be what it takes to be an entrepreneur if they don't have that in them. And that gets to the name, right? Tenacity. That is the only secret to entrepreneurial success. Brilliance is assumed or nobody's going to fund you. Great idea is assumed, once again, or nobody's going to fund you. And a huge market is assumed or nobody's going to fund you. The difference between having those three things and succeeding and failing often comes down to the grit and drive and determination. All that adds up to tenacity of the founder. Now, you did ask how I came up with the name. I actually my daughter still gives me a hard time. My daughter's name is Electa, Electa. It means the chosen one in Latin. It was her grandmother's name. So I thought about naming the fund Electa because she is ineluctable. She is just fierce, competitive, hard driving. And then I also thought about someday Tenacity came to me. And then I ran a poll on Twitter at the time. And it was three choices: Electa, Tenacity, and Purple Octopus for a very specific reason.
What's purple
And
octopus? That's my favorite color, by the way. Look at
yeah,
me.
I like purple. Purple is the color of royalty.
Yeah.
But the reason I was considering Purple Octopus is I used to do a lot of road shows. I'd go out and, whether it was television or trade shows or whatever, and I did a lot of coaching of young entrepreneurs. And I would often go to events and I'd either have a question from the audience or question asked of me later, or even on stage. I can't get to venture capitalist. I am, disadvantaged in some way. I'm a woman, I'm a person of color, I'm, a one-winged bird. And it's like, yeah, I don't believe you. Yes, it is harder to get to venture capitalists when you don't have access. But if you are doing a phenomenal job, if you go out and build a business and you start to succeed in a material way and have a huge opportunity ahead of you, nobody cares if you're anything. And my quote was, I hope one day to fund a sentient purple octopus from Venus to prove to the world that it does not matter where you come from, what your skin color is, or who you are, you can still succeed. Now, I did feel like the main issue was not anything more than access. So I spun up a site called pitchben.com, which I did across two funds, including when I was at NEA, largest venture firm in the world, where anybody in the world could pitch me a 1 minute video pitch, and I promised them a 1 minute response with calibration on whether it was venture scale, whether I'd be interested. Now, out of 600 to 800 pitches, I funded one. But that's actually slightly better than I usually do because it's usually more like 1,000 to 1,500 pitches before I fund one. So net, that's why I consider Purple Octopus. Tenacity won, not by a landslide, but by a nice spread. And so to this day, my daughter still reminds me it was almost called Electa.
Was the poll more just because the word tenacity is such a, simple word to understand, or was like, did you?
Yeah, like what I've look, the word tenacity, like if I meet an entrepreneur and I tell them the name of my fund, they almost always say, "Oh, that's a great name," because they understand how definitive of entrepreneurship that word is. VC's 50-50, which tells me a lot about how much that VC really understands about the businesses he or she is funding. A lot of VCs were not operators and were not entrepreneurs. And so they're living vicariously through a lens of achievement that they may not have any direct experience with. And so it's funny how almost every entrepreneur understands the name immediately, and only about half the VCs think it's great.
That is so interesting, that lens around the VC versus an entrepreneur, because it is like you're sweating constantly. Like, I've been speaking to quite a few people, and obviously I'm very young in my business, and quite a few people have researched with the economy the way it is just like I can't do this. I'm just going to go and get a job. And there's something in me that is just like it's an easy way out. I can't give into that. Like there's that deep tenacity, there's that grit,
Yeah.
there's like no, this is going to work. I will pivot, I will do whatever I have to do. But I have a big bold vision, I have a big bold North Star. And you know what? I'll
But
do
you got to
it.
have, I mean, every entrepreneur, it's something I say to most entrepreneurs in a conversation at some point, you got to have a northern light. You got to have that North Star you're navigating towards. The other thing that it reminds me of is that, people often ask, like, how do you solve for that? How do you figure out if somebody has tenacity? And it's like, look, there's no questionnaire, there's no like blood test. I just have to spend as much time as I can with the founder and try to find enough stories to figure out where they've been in their life that would lead me to believe they will or will not give up. And sometimes you discover it and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you find out obvious that they're never going to get there, but sometimes you find clear evidence. A big thing for me is trying to understand what an entrepreneur needs versus what an entrepreneur wants, because there's an enormous difference. My daughter, who I mentioned a lot, was an undefeated track star on the San Francisco Peninsula for a long time until she went to like the
What
state or
um
nationals.
what track was she at, like
She started actually interestingly doing both long and short, but ended up doing
same?
relays, 400, and a lot of hurdling. So, but having said that, she's a tenacious person herself. I remember at one race she sort of take it a little too easy. Maybe she was too far ahead. But then all of a sudden, out of the corner of her eye, she saw another girl. Bang, just took off, right? But once she crosses that finish line, she's done. And that's the way I think about the difference between need and want. When you cross the finish line you've set for yourself, well, we're good. So you need to have a certain level of need for me to believe in you in that, and it's not something you're going to tell me. anytime anybody's ever seen me on a podcast or anywhere, they might say, "Oh, I'm really tenacious," or "I have these needs." I'm like, "Yeah, great. Thanks for the words. Now let's learn all about your story and everything else. Let
Yeah.
me find your experience. Let me, look, I don't take any second meetings unless the first meeting makes me say, wow, but it's going to take a month to 3 months to get to the point of moving from wow to funding. So
Yeah,
it's
interesting.
a
And
long
when
time
you
to spend.
also when you talk about, getting to understand a story, that's life experience, not just like business experience, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
of course.
understanding everything about the person.
Yeah,
Because
I'll give you an example. I had a founder who was making plant-based tuna for sushi bowls and sushi and poke bowls.
yeah.
And the product was exceptional. I actually was a freelance food and wine writer for 10 years and a restaurant critic, and I thought it was as good as the real thing. In fact, in the end of my diligence, I said, you know what? I need to do a factory tour. Because for a brief moment, I thought, what if he's scamming me? What if this isn't plant-based tuna? What if he just bought sushi grade tuna and said it was plant-based? So I wanted to see it for sure. And it was plant-based tuna. It was very, very cool. Anyway, but he wanted to make the world a better place, and I like that, but that's not enough of a reason. So we were talking about lots of different things. And I said, "Where'd you go to school?" "Well, I went to UT Austin." I was like, that had to be a fascinating thing. The king of meat, like that's the land of barbecue in the United States. There is no better barbecue in the world than you're going to get in Austin. And he said, "Yeah, it was interesting. I got a vegan menu on the program at the University of Texas, Austin." I was like, "Wait,
Like
what?" Like, how did you do that? Like, you literally are living in meat
meat,
capital of the planet,
100%. Yeah.
and you convince them to put a vegan menu on their choices? Like, wow. I'm surprised they didn't run you out of town with a shotgun. So anyway, we talked about that and how that process went and how hard it was. And it was like that was to me the indicator that this founder was really willing to go far and long for the things he needed and wanted in life.
Mm.
And so that helped me view why this was the right kind of founder for me to fund.
Yes, I have a mentor and he's, in business and he basically talks to me around techno prisoners. So I'm constantly like whenever I'm having a moment and I get a call and he was a previous client of mine and he's sold a few companies and now again in tech startup from a health perspective. And every time I talk to him and say to him, oh, he just looks at me and he's like, "B, lift yourself up, take no prisoners." And I always remind myself of that because, through life experiences and, when you've had, shit happen, if you like, and you just kind of go, okay, well, if I can get through that, I can get through anything. And so on the days when I'm having my business days and I'm just like, this is too hard, there's something in me that yet again goes, no, like keep going, keep going. And that's for me, that's what drives me, right? Like,
Yeah,
but
totally
what's
agree.
what's your view then on so there's tenacity and there's working hard in terms of, giving it your all, but then what about the and I hate the word balance. I won't use the word balance, but what about the need to be able to ensure that you're looking after yourself like an athlete, right? You talk about your daughter, like
Yeah, I mean, so look, I was an entrepreneur for 25 years. We used to say, we'll sleep when we're dead. You don't get balance as an entrepreneur. That ain't happening.
mm,
Now, I love CrossFit. You can get it done in an hour, and it's super intense, and twice a week is good enough for me. So you can fit it in. I'm not saying you should not take care of yourself. You should eat garbage. You should get fat. But if you want work-life balance, being an entrepreneur is not a place for you. The reality, though, is most entrepreneurs start out when they're relatively young, and they have the ability to bounce back far better than when they age. So, I find as an example when people, first of all, when people start to bring up work-life balance in a startup, I'm like, yeah, well, good luck. Go to IBM. But there is opportunities every moment of the day to find ways to take care of yourself. So, as an
mm,
example, I cannot meditate. I would love to be able to. It does not work for me. I can't do yoga. I tried that. I just started laughing. I had to leave. To me, yoga and hippies are the same thing. And it's just like my family. My mom was a hippie. My dad was a hippie, but it's just not my thing. I can work out really hard. In the old days, I used to vent by playing, shoot 'em up video games in an arcade. But here's an example. I was in a really difficult negotiation and it was not going where I needed to go. And I was furious. I just said, I just need to use the bathroom. Went outside and did like 100 push-ups on the floor. Just get that rage out.
Yeah.
Or, by the way, you don't have time? What, you don't have a floor? Really? You can't drop and do 50? Huh. Do you have feet? Because then you can do squats. Do you have a doorway? Then you can do pull-ups. Okay. Do you have a carpet? Then you can do sit-ups. Do you have two chairs? That's all it takes to do dips. You're in a hotel room in New York City? Guess what? Handstand push-ups. Great reset for your body too, from a time standpoint, if you had a bunch of jet lag. So those are more about, if you're saying you can't stay fit, then you don't understand how to do body weight exercises. You don't understand what fitness looks like.
Mm.
But if it's maybe being at peace for a moment, well, I often have to go to a conference. There's a conference in Monterey. I drive past a beach. Well, I stop and I walk down to the beach and I take off my shoes and I
Yeah. Ground
wander into
yourself.
the waves and I just watch the ocean. Or I'm in Half Moon Bay and I stand on the cliff and stare out at the sea. That's my piece. And it takes 5 minutes, right? So everybody has their own workaround. If people like to meditate, I'm sure they can do it in half an hour, and I'm sure they can do it anywhere, right? Like it's just, you've got to find your own piece.
Mm.
Maybe it's an audiobook while you're driving. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it's music in your earpods. I don't know. I walk to meetings at a location that's about 25 minutes from my house. One, that's a little bit of exercise. Two, I can either take a phone call or listen to a podcast. If I was so inclined, I could listen to music. When I go to New York City and I have back-to-back meetings, it's one of the few times I'll actually listen to like The Four Seasons by Tchaikovsky. A very plebeian piece, but I really enjoy it. And there's other classical music I like. So that's, when I'm in New York, I work all day, but one night I'll go to a Broadway show. I go to movies on the weekend. Like, there's ways to figure it out,
Yeah.
but you're going to have to work it out around the corners.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I like that because it's true. Like, I haven't had a holiday in 3 years and I'm like, oh man, I'd love a holiday, but it's just not feasible right now.
I
So
get so
it's,
bored so quickly on holidays, we call them vacations. It just doesn't work for me at all. In fact, I had an EA once when I was at NEA, and I was invited to speak. Actually, it was in Australia. I was there for a big, I think it was Jason Calcanis's big conference. And I said, you know what? The conference ends on Friday. Why don't you book me to go in the day before and have me come home on Sunday night? And she's like, no. Was like, well, what do you mean no? I mean, you sort of work for me, right? She's like, no, I won't do that because you've asked me to do that before. And literally every single time you call me on the last day of the conference and say, get me home on the first flight out of here, I'm bored. I mean, Australia is beautiful and I like Bondi Beach, but I don't need long.
yeah.
One, I was doing my road show in Europe for my IPO, and we were near I forget it's the town in Italy where you can't take cars, and in the bay there's like three hotels. Anyway, it's beautiful, beautiful spot. No, Portofino maybe. Anyway, so we had a meeting somewhere nearby. We had like a 3-hour break between the last meeting and dinner. I literally just hoofed it over there, stripped off all my clothes, and just laid on a rock by the ocean. And then when nobody was around, took off the last piece of clothing and went for a swim. Unfortunately for me, right as I jumped in and started paddling out in my nakedness, a boat pulled in with like half a dozen people. So I had to like paddle in the water for 15 minutes, like, oh yeah, I'm just hanging out. But net, you find it where you can find it. And I do love the sea. I like swimming in natural bodies of water, obviously. But it's not going to keep me there.
Mm,
That was fun. Then I was done, and it's time for me to get back to what I do. The thing is, I love what I do. It's the
mm.
only thing in my life other than my family. And I do play Call of Duty on that big screen behind me, and I have a pickleball court, and we'll play once every, say, 3 weeks with buddies. But that's it. Like, I love what I do. I could do what I do till I die. The person I probably admire more than almost anybody, I wish I'd known how awesome he was before he died. But Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner,
Yeah.
there's an audio podcast of having dinner with him that the guys from Acquired did. Oh my God, this guy's 99 years old, still cogent, having dinner parties with smart people and staying out later than them. It's like, that's the guy. He's not thinking about retiring at 99. And then he
No.
died like a month later. Awesome.
Yeah.
Intellectually engaged, enjoying what you're doing, constantly learning. And you learn through founders. Look, I saw 10,000 pitches between 2023 and 2024. I only funded 6, but I'm sure I learned
10,000.
many things. many things from those folks.
What are you seeing from, like obviously we're in the biggest revolution right now, AI, everything, it's like we're going from like this old world into this new world, and if you're not moving into the new world, well, you're gonna be left behind, right? What are you seeing then in terms of, are you noticing anything from an entrepreneurial perspective and the different founders and businesses you're looking at? Like, are you seeing that? I guess what's my question here? Is there kind of an old traditional
Well,
entrepreneur
I mean, I think your real
versus a
question
newer
comes down to
entrepreneur?
like, is it only AI from here? And the reality is, like, so last year I only funded three companies. They were all AI companies, but
Yeah,
not because I only looked at AI companies. The best and brightest will always gravitate towards the most exciting things going on in that moment in history,
yeah.
right? Silicon Valley is to entrepreneurship what Florence was during the Renaissance to artists. The
Mm,
best and brightest are drawn here from everywhere on the planet. And when they get here, they're very excited about whatever's exciting. And right now, that's AI. But the most recent company I invested in is a wildfire fighting robot. So it will use AI later, but it's not an AI company.
yeah,
I
right.
think
Okay.
the key thing is AI companies are exciting and there's great talent there. But if an entrepreneur is pitching you a business and he or she has not thoughtfully gone through how they're going to use AI, then I would question their judgment. Like AI is insanely powerful. I use right now I use ChatGPT Operator and Deep Research to basically as an analyst for me.
Yeah,
And I had it do some deep research on something once, and it was as good as any report I ever
I
got
know.
back from an associate at NEA. And that's like one of the best venture firms in the world. And those people are highly qualified. Actually, one of my founders just told me I need to move over to Gemini and 2.5 and that it's better. But if I want to understand a market, a person, an industry, a region, it's great. So if you're a founder, you don't have to be an AI founder. You should pursue what grabs you by the throat and will not let go. That's the kind of business an entrepreneur should be in. It
Love
is
that.
much, much, much harder to sort of logic your way into the next opportunity. You need something that grabs you. But once you've got that thing that grabs you, you got to think about how can I be more powerful with AI? How can I have a smaller team? How can I develop code quicker? How can I do customer service better? There's 1,000 things you can do. I have a company called Hippocratic I invested in personally. It's the only personal investment I've made since starting this fund. But that's because it was well past. I mean, I'm a seed fund. I invest in seed and pre-seed. I wrote $1 to $3 million checks. I try to buy 10% of a company, which means $10 to $30 million valuations. This
Mm,
company was raising $500 million and it was a Series A. So not what we invest in. So I got permission from my LPAC, basically my board, and I put in, whatever, $250,000 personally. So that company is using AI to act as a nurse that makes a phone call to people that have left a hospital or doctor's office and follow up and make sure they're taking care of themselves. It's truly amazing. I mean,
Isn't
the
that,
quality is
yeah,
exceptional,
it's
right?
why.
You can do so much. It's just almost, look, we haven't even we're in the tiniest bit of understanding of what AI can do for us, and it fundamentally changes a lot of things about how we'll do business. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're not using I think you're missing out on just how big this is and how important it can be to your business.
Well, yeah, I could not agree more. But I mean, the thing is, AI has been around since the 1950s. I did a course on it through the USA back in 2023, and it's been around. It's just now, it's
Yeah.
just like just going.
Well, actually, they widely disregarded neural networks in the 60s. They said
Mm,
they'd never work.
mm,
And neural networks were the first AI that really worked with machine learning. And that was, I backed my first AI company about 12, 14 years ago. It was a neural network based, machine learning based system. But the fundamental shift now is the LLMs are a totally different animal and processing power is entirely different. I mean, everybody's heard the quote that there's more processing power in this than put us on the moon. Well, now multiply that by, 1,000 H100s. Wow. I mean, it's just insane what the possibilities are. Because AI in the 60s would be like flight for cave people. Like we should fly. Well, what we do? We wave our arms up and down a lot and get some sticks and build fake feathers. Okay, very different than the reality of today. So, it has been my roommate in college was doing a master's degree at MIT in AI. I have not been in college for a very, very long time. And
yeah.
I was like, the coolest thing ever. And he gave me his textbook to look at. I'm like, oh my God, this is so huge. And then, of course, for 30 years, I never heard anything about AI. So technology grows really slowly until it grows really fast. And
Mm.
now we're in the really, really, really fast part. So
Which takes me,
also, last point, when somebody spends hundreds of billions of dollars to build something, maybe you should use it for free or for 200 bucks a month. So remember I said I play Call of Duty? I used to play, video games when I was younger, and I hadn't for a while. I thought they were sort of a rip-off at 50 bucks a piece. And then I read an article that Call of Duty Black Ops, that the company spent $1 billion to build the game. That
wow.
was how much the code cost. And I was like, wait a minute. I can buy $1 billion worth of code for 50 bucks.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
that.
I got to play that game. And so, in theory, if everybody else on the planet decided not to buy Call of Duty and I was the only buyer, that company would have spent $1 billion for me to be able to play that game. But at the end of the day, the quality of the game is exceptional. That $1 billion worth of code for 50 bucks, I'm very happy with it. Same thing with AI. So much money spent and most of it given away for free. You got to figure out how to use it.
Yeah, I also believe that, and I read this a while ago actually, that, if you're only using the free AI, you're still behind. Like, this is one investment, personal investment you should be making in terms of from a upskilling, knowledge, all of that, and understanding how to use it. Like, I mean, I'm talking about ChatGPT here.
Yeah.
That,
So
that,
I've used the Chat GPT operator for 200 bucks a month, only one month. And I didn't need it anymore. I use their premium product. Deep research seems good, but a lot of that stuff, like what I paid $200 for 6 months ago, is now $20.
mm,
So even when you're paying, the cost is coming down dramatically. The bottom line is you're just paying so little for something that's so valuable. Now, in fairness, still plenty of issues. I still yell at ChatGPT all the time for making the same damn mistakes. Not so much in the research, that's a little less often,
true.
but
I'm
like I
glad.
use it to track what I eat and it constantly gets it wrong. I'm like, come on, really? Now I yell at it. I yell at it so I don't yell at people because I
I
can
say you're
get quickly.
lying. I actually say to it, "You're lying to me right now," and then it comes back and says, "Oh, sorry, system error." Da, 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 da. Like it never
Yeah,
says,
yeah, yeah. My
but
son
I'm
was the
like,
one that
"Don't
told me
do
that he's a movie maker and he asked ChatGPT to read his script. And it said, I've read the script. You've read the whole script? Yes, I have. Okay, tell me about this thing I'm thinking about at the end. And they gave him some BS answer. He's like, you didn't read the script, did you? He's like, no, I didn't. Or it was like, no, I didn't. You got me. Sorry. So yeah, threatening it, getting mad at it. I hear those things work. It doesn't work for me. Like all I wanted to do is keep it, like I use it for a lot of things, but one of the things I use is to keep a food log. I used to do caloric restriction. It makes it so much easier to know my nutrients and my calories for the day. And like, it'll be like you're at 300, you're at 600, you're at 900, you're at 600. I'm like, no, that's impossible. Show me what I ate. It's like, okay, you missed the entire handful of walnuts or whatever. It's like, oh, yes, of course you're right. Let me fix that. I'm like, don't do that again. And it says, I won't. And then, of course, it does it again immediately. It's just very frustrating.
and
But
which
it's a
is
reminder that you got to be careful with, it's a trust but verify situation.
and okay, so that just on that, I've got a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you get to your evening. But we've just been talking a lot about machine learning, AI, entrepreneurs, the tenacity, like it's all of that, right? But I truly also believe that intuition plays a big role in determining our business, how we pursue life. What's your view on intuition?
Yeah, no, I view it as I always say gut.
Yeah, gut,
So
eat
do you
that.
ever read the book Blink? I think it
No,
was Malcolm Gladwell, very popular pop psych sort of guy. Anyway, the,
I
the
know him.
nobody
Yeah.
needs to read the book. You can just read the cover jacket. But the first part of it is he's the guy that said it takes whatever 300 hours to get to mastery or something like that. Well, the first story is there's an art historian who has been doing art history stuff for 30 years. He's hired to validate whether or not a statue attributed to, I want to say Michelangelo, was a real or a counterfeit. He walks into the room with the statue and immediately thinks to himself, that's a fake. Then he does 3 months of research and declares it real. It was a fake. So his gut was right. Your gut is something you should learn to trust and fine tune your ability to detect if it is relevant to what you are doing.
Mm.
So I believe my gut on entrepreneurs that can get it done is good because I was an entrepreneur for 25 years and I've been investing in entrepreneurs for 18. But if you ask, in fairness, if you said to me, Ben, why don't you tell me your gut on that painting being real or fake? It'd be like, yeah, I have no idea. Like, why would I have, my gut has no training. Your gut is just, or your intuition. They're both the same thing.
No,
They're your
exactly.
subconscious mind communicating to you what you already know but cannot enunciate. You don't know why something's wrong, but you know something's wrong.
Not
You
right. Yeah.
run. right? That, and it is so hard to train yourself to respect and honor those instincts because you've been taught. Like, so you say, I think it's a fake. Why? What's wrong with it? I don't know. Well, okay, well, we're just supposed to take your word? Well, yeah, if I've been doing this for 30 years, yes, you should take my word because you know a lot less than I do, and I'm pretty sure that's a fake. Does it have six fingers like ChatGPT makes it things? No, but there's something off. Maybe the guy's just very used to what the hammer and chisel strokes are. Who knows? We had a company, I won't name the fund or the company because it's not really fair, but I was at a fund. I've been at three different funds, so it could be any of them. And we had this presentation, and I was like, I was asking this entrepreneur all these questions, and I wasn't satisfied with his answers. I kept drilling, I kept drilling. And when he left, we went around and talked about it. I said, person X who's working on this deal, I get why you like this company because their revenue growth is exceptional, but I got to tell you, I've used their product and it's wretched. And I didn't love any of his answers. If you believe these numbers are real, I guess you got to fund it. But
Mm.
something's off.
Yeah,
They funded it. A year later, a whistleblower told us they were cooking the books and they basically were full of it.
yeah.
And when I was leaving that meeting, a guy who's very famous and well known by many people said to me, "You were the only one that knew." And I was like, "I didn't know." He said, "You knew something."
Yeah, it's
So
like
it's
that. It's the
just,
intuition.
I
Yeah.
could never, I asked a bunch of questions, but I could never get to the answer. And so it's sort of like plausible deniability or passive aggressive people that are like, you want to keep somebody out of a job? I'll tell you a story. I was trying to get a job at a place that I did end up working in eventually, and I didn't realize it, but the meeting the senior guy had asked me to have was actually an interview, and I didn't know that. I thought it was just a meeting. And we fine, whatever, it was very casual. But apparently I didn't wow this guy. He goes back and I think he had a personal axe to grind too. But net, he said, well, Ben's great. Really like him. He's a phenomenal seed investor. I mean, really be a great add to us. But now there's an old saying, anything before the word but is a lie.
Mm.
He said, but have we met with all the seed investors? Because if we're going to fill this role with a seed investor, I mean, I think we should meet all the seed investors, right?
Mm.
But what is that? No, it's like if you're trying to hire a female VC. Well, okay, she's awesome. I mean, B, I really like her. I got a lot of personal
But
style, a lot of
I
energy. Her
know,
background's
does my head
phenomenal.
in.
But have we met all the women? I mean, wait, you mean all 4.2 billion women? Yeah, I mean the women that could be VCs. Oh, you mean the 785,000 women in the United States alone? Like, it's an idiotic way to use passive aggression to stop a discussion because there's no response. Wouldn't it be the right thing to see all the people that are qualified for this? Sure.
Yeah,
But
it's the same with proposals though, Ben. Like I mean, when you're asked to provide a proposal, I get it, but I also kind of go, but then they're looking at that many different other proposals, and then you generally get really bad feedback, or that doesn't even make sense, or there's no opportunity to actually pitch yourself and
yeah, that's
have
always
a
hard. The
conversation.
best, I mean, I was asked to do a proposal once and we won the deal because I said, I will not do a proposal.
Yeah,
It's pretty
no,
fun.
I
Longer
stopped.
story, but we didn't
Yeah,
get paid anyway. And that
yeah.
was sort of sucked because they reneged on our bill.
The reason I asked about intuition was because this is probably my last question, then I'll get you to give us a bit of advice. But intuition and there's entrepreneurs and we'll have these pipe dreams and big North Stars. At what point would you say to an entrepreneur who intuitively, like, so for example, I'm talking about myself here, I intuitively know where my business is heading. Is it there on paper at this point in time in where what it's going to look like in a year's time? No, because I'm still working through it all. But I have this big North Star. I can see it. Like I'm very good at being a visionary and then implementing it through. But if you were to look at it right now, you'd go, I shouldn't say you'd go like that, but it's not where I want it to be, so
Yeah, you're trying to see around corners.
yeah. And so
Classic
what do
entrepreneurial
you,
obesity.
yeah, but what do you say to entrepreneurs? How do you, again, my question is, without dampening their spirit, like quite often you'll get, well, hang on, like it's almost like we'll just keep you just need to do this, but it's like, no, there's something bigger here and I'm still working through it. Like, do you generally then shut them down, or do you, in terms of this comes back to exploring them and understanding them more in the story? Like
Well, so remember when I said, I think I said this here, but I sometimes conflate meetings. If I don't say wow in the first meeting, there's no second meeting.
Yeah.
So if I'm not at wow,
Yeah.
I'm happy to give you advice. I'm happy to finish the meeting. I gave you the time. You're an entrepreneur. You deserve the time. But the meeting's it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I will generally say to a founder quite frequently is I cannot get to a yes in one meeting. I can get to a no in one meeting, or I can get to, I want to spend more time with you.
Yeah.
And if it's a no, I will have the respect to tell you the minute I know it's a no, and I will
Yeah.
explain why. So I remember I was sitting with these two female founders once. Cafe Baroni is one of the places I like to have meetings. And about 15 minutes in, I said, okay, stop. This is not a fit for me. Here's why. Boom, 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 boom. I said, but look, we booked an hour. If you want it, you can have it. Or if you want, you can have the time back to do whatever you do. And they say, yeah, why don't we split it? We'll take half the time left for Q&A and helping us with our deck, and half the time we'll just go back and get to work. So we had 40 minutes left in the meeting. An hour and 20 minutes later, I was like, okay, now I have to leave because now the meeting I didn't have after you is turned into the meeting I do have after you, and I've got to go. But I try to be as helpful as I can. I try to give feedback on decks. Usually it's just, well, two things. One, you may have a perfectly valid business. It's just not a venture scale business. The
Yeah.
spread between a business and a venture scale business is staggering, right? We were talking about Figma, one of like 6 IPOs this year. Well, how many companies do you think have been funded since Figma started?
Mhm.
To my understanding, there's about 19,000 companies seeded a year. So they've been around for at least 5 years. So that sounds like 100,000 companies, and now six of them are public. Huh. All right. That's the spread.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I would point out that, VCs believe strongly that the most important asset you have is focus. It's one of the few things. So when you're a small company, when you're a startup, the only real advantage you have against a big company is speed.
Mm.
Focus adds to speed.
Yeah.
You're not going to win on recruiting. You're not going to win on pay. You're not going to win on marketing. So you're certainly not going to win on advertising. You're not even going to win on code. Like, I don't care how brilliant you are. You think that, any big tech, these are no longer big, dumb companies. These are big, smart startups. And those smart startups are worth trillions of dollars, and they have really good teams. So, the only way you're going to beat them is to be a speedboat around a battleship. So, the more focused you are, the more speed you have, the more friction you release, and it works better. You have a better chance of winning.
Love it. Speedboat around the battleship. Yeah, love that. Yeah. Can already, I'm
The other
vision.
thing I will point out is your storytelling ability is critical
Yeah.
because everything you just said about this vision, it's only useful from a fundraising standpoint if it fits in your story.
Mm.
Storytelling is probably one of the top three skills, if not number
Couldn't
one
agree
sometimes.
more.
Fundraising, hiring, getting customers, getting press, you've got to be able to do it. And if you cannot explain what that northern light is that you see around the corner, it's not going to do you any good, right? Other people don't have your vision. You've got to be the one to explain it. And you got to be able to explain it simply and concisely in a way they can say, wow.
And AI can't do that for you either, which is my whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it can give you some versions of how your story might work or your slide deck, but it's your story, right? You're telling it beginning, middle, and end, and you can let it fill it in and then decide.
Mm. Okay, so one last question for you. What would be one piece of advice, and I feel like we've probably covered it, but what would be one piece of advice you would give to anyone who is looking to start their business, to go into starting their own business?
Well, I'll give you a variation of this, which is what I tell entrepreneurs when they get into desperate and difficult times
Yeah.
and they come for help. And I say, look, you need to remember one thing from the beginning. It is always darkest before it gets even darker. And only if you push through that do you have a chance of finding the light. Being an entrepreneur is the single hardest job on the planet if you're not a first responder. If you're putting your life at risk, yes, harder. If you work in an office, being an entrepreneur is it. Everything is on you. It is your responsibility, whether you have 2 employees or 200 or 2,000 or 20,000. It's you, right? You are lonely. You don't have people to talk to. It's just hard. The customer you think is going to convert, the advocate for you gets fired, and it all falls apart after a year of work. Just on and on and on. And by the way, anybody that's ever seen me talk has probably heard this from me before. Being an entrepreneur is waking up every morning to get kicked in the teeth by some virtual instance that's just crushing you. And you
So
just have to
true.
smile your way through it.
Totally.
And
That's
that's
why I'm
why
smiling.
tenacity is so important.
Yeah.
Smiling through
Anti-fragility.
broken teeth. One of my favorite quotes, it's not my quote, but Bill Price has started TPG, and I were having lunch with some winery guys that he had bought. And we were talking about this, and he said, the way I think about business, it's like Mike Tyson said. I was like, I don't know what Mike Tyson said. He said, yeah, Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan when they get in the ring with me until I punch them in the face. And it's like, that is so perfect for entrepreneurship.
Mm.
Well laid out plans, engineering structures, A goes to B, if this, then that, bam. And then it all changes.
Yeah.
You got to be ready for that. Your flexibility, one of my favorite quotes, firm on vision, flexible on path. When you get punched in the teeth, maybe you jog to the right and use your legs, because I'm assuming in this metaphor that you can kick. But net, if you're stuck on one way of doing things, you're not, you're walking in the ring with Mike Tyson and standing there. That is not it. Bob and weave, like what is it? Muhammad Ali used to say,
Yeah, I,
uh,
I I know,
float
right?
like a
As I
butterfly,
train
sting
like
like a
that, I
bee.
do. I do
Yeah.
the training. Yeah, no, it for me. It's wearing a non-linear. It's non-linear. There's no linear arity around it. And you talk about tenacity. I also talk about anti-fragility. It's no longer just about
Yeah.
resilience. Resilience is
I
bouncing.
agree with that. It's very true.
Anti-fragility is bouncing forward. How do you continue to bounce forward in even in those darkest moments? It's been such a privilege, like I said, and honor and joy to talk to you, Ben. You've given me, I don't know, like just a real pep in my step for a Friday.
Well, hopefully
As
it'll
I
last a little while.
as I go to a
All right.
women's business lunch now, I'm truly grateful for your time. Thank you so much. How do we find out more about your tenacity venture, your wise words, everything?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty open-minded to doing things exactly like this. So there's a reasonable amount of content. As you mentioned, I've been on a lot of shows. You Google me, I mean, there's only Narasin, Narasin.
I
There's
know.
only me, my dad, and my kids and wife. So not a lot of Narasins out there. So if it says the name Narasin, it's probably me. If you look at me on LinkedIn, by the way, it says very clearly, and I'll say this at the end, anybody can pitch me. My old pitchben.com isn't up anymore. So now on LinkedIn, it's just send me a one-line elevator pitch in ARR. If you do that, I'm going to respond. What most people do is send me 7 or 8 paragraphs, in which case I send a response, which is a picture of my LinkedIn profile with a big circle around the send me one line ARR. And to your point on any fragility, sometimes people are like, well, it would have been more polite if you did this or that. And I was like, wow, that is some thin skin. I literally just had a guy, he got all upset with me. I was like, I want to understand something. You're sending me unsolicited spam. I had the respect for you to respond to point out that you had done no work at all. You had not even read my profile, and you're upset with me for pointing out my standard method of asking for you to pitch. You're asking me for money. You're getting uptight about the fact that I wanted you to follow my format. Good luck, because that is a thin skinned, ultra fragile human being who should never waste their time being a founder. And, it takes a lot for me to come back with a comment like that, but it was like, dude, come on.
Yeah, calm
Really?
down. Yeah.
Huh. Good luck raising money, good luck running a business when you can't handle someone pointing to the style that they appreciate when you're the one out basically with a cup looking for cash from somebody that has, and by the way, they're in a business I don't cover. It literally says I don't do crypto security or med tech. And it's like, oh, we do this crypto thing. Really? Really?
I
Oh,
know.
I'm so glad.
It's,
And of course,
it's
it
like
leads with, oh, I'm
Fleeca.
so
It's
impressed with what
Fleeca.
you've done it to now. You're not impressed with anything. You didn't read anything.
Yeah.
You used Sales Navigator to spam 100 people, and you were mad that I sent you a note you didn't like. Pff, give me a break.
Yeah, you even said
Anyway,
to me the other day in my email, this is long. And I was like, went straight away, went, yep, I got it. Yep, totally got it. He just
yeah,
like short,
TLDR.
short, sharp, bang. Yeah, totally get it. I think
Yeah, I
again,
because the note is you can pitch me a business or you can pitch me what you want to talk about. But if it's 6 or 7 paragraphs, I mean, I wake up 400 behind. I'm not like novel. Every VC gets bombarded with stuff. So really, I'm going to take the time to read 8 paragraphs from 450 people I wake up with
no.
and then respond to each with a thoughtful thing. No. By the way, if you want a better chance of a response, be specific in your ask. Sometimes people will say, if this is of interest, please let me know. I never respond to those. And then they follow up, say, I'm just bringing this to the top. I want to reach, I say, not a fit. But if it's not a fit, but then I think I really want to say back, here's your note. You see where it says, if this is of interest, please respond? It's not, or I would have responded. I read all my own emails. I read all of my Twitter DMs. I read all my LinkedIn's.
So do I.
Yeah, there's nothing getting in between you and
No,
me except using a format that I am willing to see. One of the number one rules of selling, obviously ABC is one. And by the way, if anybody's a seller and they haven't seen Glengarry and Ross, got to go see it. It's now on Broadway. It's really quite good. In fact, I have the cup over there. I was so excited about it
I love Broadway.
that it came out on Broadway. So one of the top rules of selling, it doesn't matter what you want. It matters what the person across the table from you wants. And when the person across from the table from you tells you what they want, probably a good idea to figure that out and do what they've asked. That's going to make your sales job a lot easier. And
Totally
a quick
agree.
no is a lot better than a long unknown.
Yeah, I agree. Could not agree more. Ben, thank you so much. I'm going to let you get to
All right.
your evening. Yeah,
Good to
real
see you.
privilege.
Thanks for doing this.
No, thank you. Bye.